Welcome to Season 4, Episode 11 of the Sunday Extra podcast. For those of you viewing the podcast, you will note, once I switch the camera, you will note...
We've been recording this whole time?
Yeah.
Okay.
The whole time I've been recording.
Wow. So we're going to have like a 15-minute intro of us doing nothing, or we're just going to cut to the welcome?
We usually cut to the welcome.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
What the audience doesn't know is the banter we have ahead of time.
Yes. To warm us up.
There's some podcasts who let that roll, and just as soon as they hit record, that's what we post. And we are not that podcast.
That would have been pretty boring. This
That would have been very boring.
We would have lost everybody.
But we're a couple people late today. It's spring break week, and so Pastor Luke is out with the students. He and the other HSM leaders, they're on a student mission trip somewhere in the vicinity, helping out, doing like a VBS type thing. Pastor Jeremy's out taking some well-deserved family time, so it's me, Pastor Jake, Pastor Matt, and we're all hanging out.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Here we are.
I will say this past weekend, I think you guys were there.
Yeah.
I don't know who in the audience was there, but we were calling it a low impact, which cracking me up because then we changed it to a no jumping event on the calendar, to which then Rachel says, did we change the park event? Because no, I was just
No jumping at the park.
No jumping in the park.
Nothing. It was a low
Jake, I think I saw your girls violating.
They need to therefore be arrested now.
But it turned out to be a nice time out together with everybody
Yes.
out in Watauga. Yeah.
Yes. Low impact in the sense that
There wasn't a program.
There's no program. There's no cost
Yeah.
to the participants. You just show up at a park.
Show up at a park.
If and probably the I think most of the people I saw there had kids.
Yeah.
Actually, no, a few in our young professionals who did not have kids. They were the ones out there playing frisbee.
Yes.
One of our newest empty nesters was there.
Oh, okay.
Also without
Oh, that's true. That's right.
Yeah. Brand new empty nesters.
Brand new, yeah. So, but the vast majority,
Yes.
were people that had kids in the home, and kids were running around on the playground equipment and doing all kinds of stuff. So
Sam Battershell was doing a football game with some of the young boys, and that was pretty cool. And
Yeah.
it was a big park, so you had people could be doing a bunch of different activities and still be in the vicinity of seeing one another. So that was a really great setup.
Yeah, it's a great park. Shout out to Libby for finding that park for us.
hey, all right.
Woohoo!
Way to go. So you're headed, Pastor Matt, up to the Great White North tomorrow. Ye Old Canada, which is, please keep wearing that hat every time.
Yes, please do it.
Every time.
You
Because
have to describe my hat for those that are not watching.
for those of you who aren't watching, it is a red hat that looks like it's Make America Great Again color. But it's more than that because it actually has the American flag with the Olympic rings, just to remind the Canadians.
Well, and it is the Team
USA.
with
There you go. With the hockey hat.
hockey
Wow, I love
Because your
it
son's
so
playing
much.
hockey.
Yeah.
We won against Canada in hockey. But you were saying earlier we beat Canada in hockey 3 different ways. So there was the regular Olympics, there was the Paralympics.
Yeah, I can't think of the title. It's like sled hockey.
Okay.
Guys are playing. They're like on these really cool little sleds, and they've got 2 sticks, and they move around with them, and then they shoot. But we just recently, first the women, then the men, and then now this team recently. So that's three victories over Canada.
I love it.
My kids, when I basically said goodbye to my kids this morning. Because we're leaving super early in tomorrow morning to get to the airport, and my son was still there. My daughter was at practice, and he's like, "Daddy, you're not going to wear that hat, are you?" They've been joking the whole time about, because we won't rehash this, but they're like, "You don't want to be in Canadian prison with Uncle Brian again." And that's a story we've told before. We won't go there now, but. Anyway,
times.
so we're going up there to primary purpose of our trip is we're meeting with our partner seminary where Jake is recently finished. You're not technically an alumni yet.
Correct.
But you will be. You finished all your coursework. You got to wait for the next graduation. It's actually my alma mater as well, in a way, I guess.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so we've got some partnership meetings with them on Wednesday. So we're flying up there tomorrow. We'll fly back Friday and going to meet with a couple of other missionaries up in the area.
This is where you're getting your doctorate from too.
No, that's a different
place?
seminary.
Oh, there you go. Different alma mater.
It's actually, I mean, just a lot further south in California.
Are you doing it Gateway?
Gateway.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So, but yeah, so we'll, unfortunately, last check of the forecast, it's like somewhere between, 90 and 99% chance of rain. It's like highs in the 40s, lows in the 30s. So
it's like today then.
Except
for the rain.
I mean, today that was pretty amazing. Pretty cool. How cold it was today. That was unexpected.
I thought our house was going to blow away to Oz last night. It was pretty wild.
Mine too. Crazy winds. Oh my gosh.
So Luke's out. Jeremy's out. You're going to Canada. My only excitement this week is I'm getting ready to speak on Sunday, so I've got that to deal with. And then, you got anything exciting?
Well, I have a friend I want to get time with. Maybe we work out, and I want to invite him to Easter.
There you go.
So yeah, I think in the past I've made the mistake of like waiting like a week before to invite someone to Easter, and they've already made plans. Okay. So this year I want to do like at least 2 weeks in advance, and we just prayed for him to come to Easter just a little bit ago. So I got to keep praying for him. I want to hang out with him, and we had him and his fiance over to our house last week. So again, building the friendship, and I just really want him to experience Jesus.
Yeah.
Experience God's ways. So yeah, hopefully this weekend we get together. So
I'll also put in this production note that the audio people could care less about, but I've tried the different camera angles for today, and Matt just looks so lonely on the solo shot. So I'm just going to leave it on the wide shot for the whole thing and just let it go.
Shot. There you go.
It's much happier. So we are almost in the book of John. We're almost done with John. And I think it's interesting, as we were looking at it last week, that chapters 1 through 6 cover about 2.5 years of Jesus's public ministry. And that as we are making our way to the end of John, time starts to shrink a little bit. So Sunday we covered 6 months, but we also covered 6 chapters. Mm-hmm. There's just a lot more detail. And then the next 3 weeks, well, the third week is Resurrection Sunday and everything after, but this coming Sunday, the one after, is all of 24 hours or less than 24 hours of Jesus's final hours of public ministry. So just to do a quick recap of what we covered in case you weren't able to be a part of what was going on Sunday or would like a refresher, because it's been a few days. So during this time of these last 6 months, obviously, this is like when you watch the Titanic, you're like, okay, I know at some point they're going to hit an iceberg and the whole thing's going to fall apart, right? Okay, so we know that at some point Jesus is going to be falsely accused, be executed on a cross, rise from the dead, and all that kind of stuff. So we can assume that as we get closer to the end of John, the intensity of Jesus' ministry is going to increase. And I think as he nears his death, he becomes a little more obvious about who he is, that he is God's son. He's a little more obvious with the disciples about what he's trying to teach. So the miracles become greater, opposition becomes stronger. The idea we looked at on Sunday was that Jesus reveals who he is through his words and actions, and every person that's back then and now is forced to decide whether they will believe in Jesus or reject Jesus. So there were some major points. One was that we saw Jesus publicly reveal his identity. We briefly looked at this. Well, I say briefly. We briefly touched on this. We really looked at it back in the I Am series. He makes two of these I Am statements. I am being God's name that he revealed to Abraham back in the Old Testament when Abraham was like, "What's your name?" And he said, "I am," meaning I have been, I am, I will be. It's all of that stuff. So when he says, "I am the light of the world," or "I am the bread of life," he is saying that he is God. So he's making bold claims that the Jewish leaders were well aware of. These aren't casual statements. He's clearly claiming to be God and that he's fulfilling promises that God has made with his people for centuries. But because of this, people are divided, which we'll look at a little bit more later in this overview. But some believed, others wanted to arrest him or stone him. I thought you had a great statement, like they're not picking up stones because they want to play catch with Jesus. That's true.
We don't do very many like stoning today.
We do,
or getting stoned that means something
very different. Yes,
right. True.
So second, Jesus demonstrated his authority through miraculous signs. So we looked at, I've always loved this story about the man who was born blind, and Jesus restores his sight, and just the back and forth between just a regular dude and the pompous religious leaders, and how with just a simple testimony, he's really able to stymie them because it doesn't fit their worldview. But these, so there was that one, and then there was raising Lazarus from the dead, which gets me to my youth pastor joke of the day, which is how many other people came out of the tomb with Lazarus? There were 3 others because Jesus said, "Lazarus, come forth."
Oh my gosh.
Moving on.
Wow. There you go.
Moving on. So Lazarus was dead 4 days, which effectively meant in that culture that the spirit was gone. He was dead. And Jesus raised him back to life. These miracles prove that Jesus had authority, not just over sickness, but death itself. And these signs produce in the people 2 opposite responses. So again, some people believe, others start to plot his death. So everything is intensifying. And then third, we saw that the world becomes increasingly divided over Jesus. And that continues on to this day. So we said that there were 3 groups then. There's still these same 3 groups now. There's the curious, who are interested in learning more, but they're undecided about really what to make of Jesus. There are the convinced. They've already had an encounter with Jesus and have decided to put their faith in him and believe. And then there are the combative. In the gospel, the combative were generally religious leaders who were moving from just skepticism about him to open hostility and plotting Jesus' death. Combative folks today aren't necessarily religious leaders. I hope they're not religious leaders. That would be a whole other problem. And then finally, we looked in John 12 as Jesus begins moving intentionally toward the cross. Mary anoints him for burial. She anoints his feet. Is it his feet with the nard? I know she washes his hair, or she washes his feet with her hair, but I can't remember if that's when the perfume was there. He enters Jerusalem for the triumphal entry. We call that Palm Sunday, which is coming up in just a couple of Sundays. And then there was even a voice from heaven that affirmed Jesus's mission. So Jesus is making it clear that he came not to condemn the world, but to save it. And then you had a chart that put the difference between Jesus's first coming, which is that he came to save, and the second coming, he's coming to judge. So then you had, so what does this mean for us? Jesus is not just a teacher, he's God in the flesh. Evidence alone does not produce faith. A lot of folks saw the miracles and still they refused to believe. Spiritual blindness is more dangerous than physical blindness. We all know how dangerous physical blindness can be. And then every person must decide how they will respond to Jesus, which I think has been a theme we've been revisiting for a long time at Hope. So the same choice that people faced 2 millennia ago, are still confronting us today, because the salvation that was provided to us through Jesus is a divine act that demands a human response. So we also must decide how we're going to respond to Jesus. So I know from what I'm putting together for Sunday, because I'm covering several chapters that just deal with a few hours. You dealt with 6 chapters that covered several months. There's a lot there that it would take weeks to really kind of flesh all that out. What would you like to say now that you weren't able to say in the message on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm really glad that we had the series, the I Am series, back in the fall, which, I mean, as I was kind of laying out, about a year's worth of time, I intentionally knew that we were doing this in the fall and we're doing this in the spring, so that took a lot of pressure out. But here's just several things I want to highlight. One of them is something you just most recently said, and that is, the voice from heaven. So I just really sort of glazed over that, but I think it's really fascinating that this is actually the 3rd instance in the Gospels when we hear God's voice from heaven. So the first instance was Jesus' baptism, right? Second time was the transfiguration.
So cool.
And then now there's this time. So, it's very significant. The beginning of Jesus' public ministry is when he's sort of baptized there and gets God's, approval over him as he's beginning. And then he's this moment where, the few that were there got to see him in all of his glory. And then here it is, he's triumphantly entered, and he's now moving towards the whole reason and purpose that he came. So anyway, that was just kind of interesting, but that didn't really fit into I didn't have the 2 minutes that I just said. I didn't have it on Sunday. So but here's a couple of things that just didn't make it in. We talked about, I made the jokes about John 11:35, Jesus wept, shortest verse, good one to start with. But I do want to say that, what's interesting about this is that mourning is not a lack of faith. And really what we're seeing here with Jesus is his example shows that heartfelt mourning in the face of death, it doesn't indicate a lack of faith, but there can be honest sorrow and the reality of suffering and death. And I really think this is one of the distinctions between, being a Christian and other worldviews, other religions, is it's like we actually can live in reality and say death and dying and hard things, they're really hard. We don't have to just, in fact, even in Paul writes in Romans 12:15, rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. So we can actually do that, right? It's not like, you're sad, and you should be rejoicing right now. No, yeah. I'm mourning the loss of a real person and a real relationship, and so Jesus shows us that. It seems like what we understand from the scriptures is there was some type of friendly relationship that Jesus had with Lazarus. He wasn't just like a random guy that Jesus raised from the dead. So there was this, a relationship. So it's natural that Jesus would be sad. But the crazy thing is, Jesus knew what he was about to do, right? You think of all the people, why would Jesus wait? You think Jesus would be like, just wait, to this, just check this out, guys, but he shows us and he models that. So that's one thing that, just because you're mourning or you're weeping, that doesn't mean you have lack of faith. That just means you're living in reality. The other thing, I mentioned this, but this particular miracle, I did talk about the 4 days, and you mentioned that a moment ago, Brian, but when you think about it in the context of the other three people that Jesus raised from the dead, like this was the most dramatic. So there was the 12-year-old daughter of Jairus, who she was sick. She died right before Jesus got there. We see this in Mark chapter 5. And then there was the son of a widow. And Jesus met the funeral procession as it was going. So they were like carrying. He didn't just die, but he hadn't been put in the grave yet. And that's in Luke chapter 7. So this is the third person that Jesus raises from the dead, and just the time. The girl had been dead just for a few hours. The young man had been dead longer, but not yet buried. And then Lazarus, he's already starting to decay.
Yeah.
And I, most of the time we talk about how we use, ESV is probably my primary Bible that I use, and sometimes we use NLT, or I like the Amplified, but there really is. You got to read this in King James.
You really do.
And it's like, it says, "But Lord, he stinketh." It's just the ESV, the NLT, they don't quite capture the essence of it. But Lord, he stinketh, which is like he's already decaying, right? And so I think what's interesting here is when we think about the spiritual side of, everyone starts out spiritually dead, right? And people show different visible signs of their spiritual death. Sometimes we see people who are outwardly decaying, right? And you're just like, man, I can see it, right? Sometimes we see people that they look pretty good on the outside. Maybe they even go to church, but they're still spiritually dead. So there's just so much wrapped up in this. We covered some of that back in the fall, but I was like, all right, I'm going to put the energy into the blind man. But there's just so much we had to kind of skip over with that. And then the end of this whole thing with Lazarus, I think one of the big lessons for us is Jesus does what only he can do, and that's raise people from the dead. And then he immediately calls the community to come, and he says, loosen him, which take these grave clothes off, which is another reason why we need other people in our life. Our spiritual life, the life of a Christ follower, is never meant to be done alone. And we've got to have other people in our life. And we just see this picture here, the community's role in helping remove the grave clothes.
Because with that, I'm remembering, it's like maybe 5 sermons I remember, because you hear a lot of sermons and they kind of somewhat go in and out, but they're like, some of them are just stickier than others. And one of them I heard was on Lazarus. And I think the thing that maybe if you're an undertaker, a current day undertaker, you might have more appreciation for this, but my understanding is he was basically shellacked into all of those grave clothes. So like there's the binding, but then there's all of the spices and the other resins and whatnot. Like he was hardened in that stuff. So the community taking him out was really difficult. Like you really had to work at it. So it wasn't an easy thing. The sermon thing was that dying is really easy, but living is very hard. And so it's easy to die, to be dying in your sin. That doesn't take a whole lot of effort, but if you want to live in freedom, it's going to take a lot of work to get the metaphorical grave clothes off. So they were talking about how caked on those grave clothes would be. But yeah, it would take a community effort to help get you out of all that stuff.
Yeah. And then, again, I would have liked to have gone further again, at the risk of repeating myself, with just the idea that Jesus, it's just a few verses, but that the Greeks come and they're seeking Jesus here at the end, and just the power of what that means for the rest of us, that it's going to mark the end of Jesus' mission. God sent Jesus to God's people, the Jews. And we see how so many of them responded. And God's plan of salvation was always broader than just the Jews, but that was unfathomable to the Jews at that time, especially because of just them needing to be set apart. And this is why, skipping ahead, we're going to get to Acts amount of separation that the Jews were to have from the Gentiles was so significant that this is why Peter had to have this vision that we find in Acts in order to open up the doorway for the gospel to go to the Gentiles, to set the stage for Paul to spend all of the energy that he spends. Which again, you think about how Paul grew up and where he was, and he was like, he's the apostle to the Gentiles. Yeah. And before that, when he was still, a practicing Jew in that sense, it was like he would have despised himself. Yeah. But that just again shows the radical change that Christ can do.
That vision from Peter is just one of the cooler stories in Acts. Like, why? And then, oh,
that's why. Yeah. And then so then how we're living in the arrow right now, the time between the first and second coming. I think it's one of those things that like it's really easy not to think about that. Like this narrow window that we're in, and there's even there's comparison. I believe it's in Matthew of like the time that we're in with this arrow is like the time when the ark was built before God closed the door. Because a lot of times we don't think about the fact like God is the one that shut them in the ark, right? So all the animals that are there in the ark, and in fact, this was comparison of we're in this time period right now that we can come to Jesus. He came to save, and we're in that time period now, and the door's open. But when he comes again, the door will be shut. The window is closed, and there was the flood of judgment that happened that we read about, but the judgment that is to come is going to make that flood seem like a little trickle.
Yeah.
And so I mentioned this on Sunday, but when we die, our physical death, really the two questions we're going to be asked. I focused on the first question, which was, what did you do with Jesus? That's the salvation question. And again, our answer needs to be, I surrender my life to him. Acknowledging that I'm a sinner and there's nothing I can do on my own to take care of my sin problem. I put my trust in Jesus as Savior, that his death on the cross was enough to satisfy my sin debt and reconcile me to God. That's the first question. That's the big one. But then the other part, which they would have totally taken things sideways, but there was going to be another question, and that is, well, what did you do with all that I entrusted you with? Which is the stewardship question. It's because Jesus is Lord. We need to live our life in such a way that he is Lord. He owns everything we have.
Yes.
And he gives us whatever we have, even, the fact that you're like, well, I earned it. I have a job. Well, who provided that job? Who provides you with the skill, the intellect, the ability, whatever, to do that job? So he provided it for you. And he expects us, those of us that belong to him, to use what he has entrusted to us to take care of our families. Yeah. Absolutely. But also to be able to expand his kingdom, again, while there's still time. While we're in that arrow, there's time for other people to say yes. And, and that's just, one of the reasons why are our students on this mission trip this week? Well, it's because there's an opportunity to share the gospel. And before we came in here and started filming, Jake and I were downstairs and we were meeting, and Jake's, I'll just go ahead and announce it here, but Jake's working on like what would it look like for us to have an adult mission experience sometime in the not too distant future. And so that's what Jake's working on. Yep. Why would we take time away from work, and why would people, spend money? It's like, because there's people who don't know Jesus, who need Jesus. And that is one way that we can steward our resources of time and money to help share the gospel with people who are far from him. Like our primary mission field is here in Fort Worth, but we're also to be a part of seeing as many people in other places. And so we just didn't have time to get into all that.
What I do really like, so my two daughters are going on this student mission trip this week. And I mean, it is in a foreign land of Dallas County.
That'll be a real cross-cultural experience.
But in another sense, it is a real cross-cultural experience because they're reaching out to refugees who are in the United States for, I don't know why. I don't mean like from all the immigration hullabaloo. I really don't know why. Like my daughter was asking, so why are refugees here? I'm like, well, often it's war, like something has displaced them from their home, or the ruling group has decided to make life difficult for them, and so they want to get out of town, and so they come to the United States. But one of the fun things about the DFW area being one of those kind of hub places is you could go on an international mission trip and really still stay in the same time zone, and just go like an hour away. So they are getting an international experience, even though they don't have to bring their passport, or
you don't have to travel across somewhere else, which by the way, interesting,
the world is coming to us.
That's right. Interesting. Refugees, I just looked this up really quick. So according to Google, which is a pretty good reason, this is what I would have guessed, but I wanted to not just give a total guess, but refugees come to the United States primarily to escape life-threatening dangers, including armed conflict, political repression, and persecution based on race, religion, or social group. So, there's some kind of a problem targeted at them or the group that they're in, wherever it is that they came from. So, when you come as a refugee, that there's a process and acceptance, and you're like, okay, you're here, and which, interestingly enough, I mean, I was listening to another podcast of a guy who's probably around in his 50s now, but he fled Iran when he was a child. Oh, wow. I think he might have been like middle school, high school, but this was in the 70s. And his dad was actually in high-ranking military official in Iran, and when the whole regime and they were he had this crazy story, and but he actually came to, I forget the city, but it was somewhere in Texas, and that was basically where he grew up his life, Wow. And then his basically I can't remember. I don't think he was a Christian yet. And then he became a Christian, and then eventually, his whole family became a Christian. Wow. So all that to say that, we talk about when people are most open to the gospel is when there's, transition, trouble, tension. So refugees here in America, they're escaping some kind of awful conditions back home. And it's a time when they can be open. So, we're working with an organization that does this all the time. And I'm looking forward to hearing when the students get back, all of what they got to be a part of. So,
wow, that's awesome.
So you talk about something else that was fascinating. You're looking at the picture of Jesus's miracles and his claims about his divinity in chapter 12. Granted, again, a lot going on, not a lot of time on Sundays. Can you kind of I think you were wanting to pull all that together a little bit more for us.
Yeah. You guys, when we did the run through on Wednesday, you nixed my chart. But I worked another one. I added another
one. The streak is alive. I love charts.
I had this great chart that I really do think is helpful. But again, it was a good call, good feedback to not include it. But I knew we were going to do the podcast. So here we go.
Here we go.
But we're looking at Jesus. He's revealing his identity, and he's demonstrating his authority. And I think it's really interesting when we get to the end of chapter 12. Well, actually, it's right before we get to chapter 12, before the triumphal entry. Okay, so end of chapter 11. Jesus has already done the 7 miracles. I mean, one of the things John highlights is the 7 miracles and 7 I am statements. All right, so he's already, the 7 miracles is the water to wine, chapter 2. is healing the official son, chapter 4. Healing the invalid, Jeremy talked about this, chapter 5. We got feeding the 5,000 and walking on water in chapter 6. We talked about that. And then chapter 9, this healing the man born blind, and then raising Lazarus, chapter 11. All right, so like he's already completed all 7 miracles. And by the time we end chapter 11, he has already made 5 of the 7 I am statements. All right. So I'm the bread of life, chapter 6. I'm the light of the world, chapter 8. And then they're back to back. I am the door. I'm the good shepherd, chapter 10. I'm the resurrection and the life, chapter 11. And then what you're going to tackle these next 2, but you look at the context. This is within the last 24 hours of Jesus' life. It also, like, I think he's ramping up. Like, so there's the last miracle, which is raising Lazarus. Right now, some theologians and people argue, like, well, what about the resurrection was a greater miracle? It's like, well, yeah, but this is all leading up to the cross, right? So then, okay, is there 8? Okay, fine. But these 7 that we see before Jesus is crucified, right? But what's going to happen is in John 14:6, this is the I am the way, the truth, and the life, right? And I don't want to give away too much, but this is the context. This is the last 24 hours, and this is part of probably what you're going to talk about on Sunday, Brian. So I'm teasing that out for you. And then, though, the final statement, I am statement, that's connected to this metaphor, connecting to something, is I am the true vine, and that's in chapter 15. So it's just fascinating how, again, the build, right? So John is he tells us, in chapter 20, verse 31, what is his reason, his purpose. It's apologetic and evangelistic, and he's, again, the whole way he writes it is like he's building a case. You can see things just sort of ramping up to the cross. And so, again, I just want to make sure our podcast listeners see the context of that. We just didn't have time to get into it on Sunday, but it's pretty significant.
Yeah. We also mentioned, I thought this was funny, you had it like a little Jeff Foxworthy moment. For those,
that totally came to me in the moment. Like,
in the moment?
Like, here's this one of those weird things. Like, I'm looking out at the crowd, and I can see, like, kind of where people are at, and maybe some of them are like, I mean, they're there, they're with me, and I'm like, this is about to be like pretty heavy, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, how can I, say a heavy thing in as light of a way as possible, so they might receive it, Yes. And it just came to me like, you might be a redneck if. Like, well, you might be spiritually blind if.
So for those, depending on the age, I have no idea what the age of our podcast audience is. So if you don't know, Jeff Foxworthy is a stand-up comedian of the Southern American persuasion, and had this thing back in the I don't know when's now.
Probably the 90s.
Just a bunch of one-liners that were fantastic. Like, you might be a redneck if, and then he would lay out this whole thing of like the most trailer parkish kind of thing. Like, you might be a redneck. If you done da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you might be a redneck. So then you're launching that you might be spiritually blind if, and anyway, you said that you would go a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah.
You got some redneck jokes pulled in?
Well, no. Well, I just looked it up. So it was mid-90s. That's what I thought.
There you go.
So this was, this for me, mid-90s. This was like end of high school, beginning of college for me. So there you go. You can look it up if you don't know what we're talking about. But so let me just let me take a couple of layers with this. So reminder of what did I say? Scripture gives us some warning signs, right? So you resist correction. Mm-hmm. So I say you might be spiritually blind if you resist correction. If you explain away what God's word clearly says, you might be spiritually blind. If you're confident in your righteousness, but you're cold towards Jesus, you might be spiritually blind. Or if everyone else can see it except for you, you might be spiritually blind. So let me just go a little deeper with this here. So when it comes to resisting correction, I think one of the clearest signs of spiritual blindness is defensiveness. You just get really defensive. In fact, Proverbs 12:1 says, "Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid." So this shows up, a lot of different ways. I'm just here's some random examples. But if a spouse gently points out a pattern of anger, and the response back is, "You're the one with the problem," that's not good. If a group leader confronts someone about gossip and the response is, "I'm just sharing a prayer request," well, it's like, no, you're not. If a friend raises a concern about a relationship or a decision, and the immediate reaction is irritation, right? Then you might be spiritually blind in this resisting correction realm. And, but a spiritually healthy person, when somebody brings up something, the immediate response is, let me think about that, right? We sometimes talk about, what's the kernel of truth? Even if you're wrong in the totality of what you see, it's like, oh, man, I need to stop and think about this. Like Brian was right in pointing out that I was wrong, but he didn't quite understand what I was wrong about, So that's the first one. The second one, you explain away what God's word clearly says. So instead of submitting to Scripture, what happens is you reinterpret it so that it doesn't confront you. And this can show up a lot of different ways. If there's we'll just be real here, right? If you're listening, I assume you want to. So if there's a couple who's not married and they're sleeping together, they're having sex, and somebody then points out a passage like Hebrews 13:4 that says, let the marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled. For God will judge the sexually immoral and the adulterous, right? Somebody points that out, and they say, well, the Bible was written in a different culture. It's written in a different time. If somebody is holding bitterness towards a family member, even though Jesus talks about and others in the New Testament talk about the need for forgiveness, so they're like, well, it's okay for me to be bitter and hold this against them. And their response is, well, you just don't understand what they did to me. Right. And that's where you're like, bro, you don't understand your sin and what an offense that is to God. Yes. And in Christ, he forgave you. So, that tiff that you had with a family member, I'm not saying it's not real. I've dealt with family situations over the years of my own family, and I will say this though: the longer I walk with Jesus and the more spiritual mature I get, all those things get a whole lot smaller, because I realize in light of what Christ has forgiven me for, this is it's a real thing, and we need to figure out how to work this out. But it's not that I can now hold bitterness against him for the rest of my life. It's so. We could go on and on, but a person, whenever they see a difficult command of Jesus, and their instinct is not. If your instinct is not, how do I obey this? But surely that doesn't mean what it says, or that doesn't apply to me. So that's and maybe it shows up with we start trying to negotiate with Scripture instead of surrendering to God's word and God's command. Third one, you feel spiritually confident in your righteousness, right? But you're not growing in your love towards Jesus. This is actually, this is probably the Pharisees. They were very religious, but their hearts were very far from God. Jesus warned about this in Matthew chapter 15. He talks about how this people, they honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. And it's really easy to say one thing, but what's really going on in our heart is what's really going on in our heart. So this could show up like somebody they attend church regularly, but they're not engaged in God's word during the week. Maybe they're even serving, but then their private prayer life and they're not taking thoughts captive, and they're just sort of living a totally different way. Somebody who, here's another one. I mean, we're going to get real here, but like somebody who knows a lot about theology, right? Like, man, that person knows a lot. They're really smart, but they lack humility. Mm-hmm. They lack kindness. They lack compassion. And so they got all the right answers, but again, it's like, are you living what it says? Mm-hmm. And then I think it also can kind of show up in like if somebody who is passionate about being right in arguments, but they're not so concerned about loving people. Mm-hmm. That would be concerning. You might be spiritually blind. And then the fourth one, I'll qualify it here. It's possible that anybody can see anything, right? Have you guys ever been like driving and maybe like people keep honking at you, and you're like, why are people honking at me, right? And then finally you realize, there's like my gas tank is open, right? Yeah. Or here, let me
better that than the hose.
Well, I actually did that one. This was okay. So time out here.
Like, oh no.
In my defense, I was like, it was in college. Okay. I was in college, and we went on a road trip during a break, and we left super early. Like, I was joking about people who've never seen the sunrise. Like we left way before the sunrise, and we drove for, I don't know, several hours, and it's like the sun is just barely coming up now, and stopped for gas, and I'm like so tired, and I filled up the tank in the truck and then just drove away. And then I realized, like, fortunately they make those things to break away, right? Yeah. But I'm like, what do I do? So I think the thing just eventually fell out, or maybe I took it out and just left it on the side of the road. I'm not going back. But it was so early that nobody noticed, right? But maybe people do notice. Or this is another thing happened to me. I was a couple weeks ago when I went out to Southern California, work with one of our network churches, and did spoke in the Antioch training and did a walk through the Bible event for them. I'm leaving the hotel like early this morning, and this guy was like walking in front of me on the sidewalk, and I'm parked right up at the front, and he's like, hey. And like I'm backing up, and I'm thinking, this, like, do I know this guy? This is kind of weird. And he's like, your coffee. And so I had my coffee like, sitting up on the roof, because I set it up there to put the rest of the stuff in the car. Yes. I'm like, thanks, bro. And that was a full cup of coffee that I needed. So he saved it. He saved it before. Wow. So anybody can point out something going on, but specifically here we're talking about being spiritually blind. So if godly people see something in your life and you refuse to see it, I think that the clearest sign of spiritual blindness is when you have consistent feedback from wise people that you choose to dismiss. So Proverbs 15:22, it says, without counsel plans fail, but with many advisors they succeed. So this could show up again in a variety of different ways. Multiple trusted people raise concerns about a dating relationship. All right, but the response is just, well, you just don't understand. You don't understand, period, or you don't understand what it's like to date today because you've been married for years. You don't understand, my special case, right? That anytime somebody uses the my special case, several people notice a pattern in your life. Could be anger, could be pride, should be controlling, whatever it is. But the person sort of just dismisses it, right? Maybe a friend, a spouse, a leader, somebody raises an issue that is repeatedly coming up, right? We're not talking about just one time. We're like, man, Jake, you seem to frequently be angry. What's going on, bro? And you're like, you're not, right? But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think the thing is, if multiple godly people are raising an issue or a concern in your life, wise people do not dismiss that. Instead, what wise people do is they say, they ask, Lord, is there something I'm not seeing here?
Yeah.
Right?
That's really good.
Because I mean, I've had people, especially, like, I mean, I've had critics, people that are just trying to be complaining and criticizing and critical, who don't have my best interest in mind, say some things. But what I need to do is I need to pray, God, is there any truth in this? Is there anything I need to deal with? And sometimes he said, no, you need to refuse that, because that's meant to discourage you. That's an attack from the devil. Other times, though, he said, you know what? There is some truth in it. And maybe it's like 0.5% of what they said is true, but that's the thing I need to look at. That's the thing I need to consider. That's the thing I need to change. And, I mean, it's like we'd like to have everything be, the way we want it, but that's just not the way it is. So a wise person can receive feedback from anyone about anything, and then take it to God and do what needs to be done, and it not just be like, well, you didn't come to me and say it this way. So those are some things, and I think really, I just sum it up with this: like, spiritual sight really begins when we admit that we need Jesus to open our eyes. So that's why I encourage people to pray the prayer. Lord, show me what I cannot see about myself. And I was super encouraged how many people today, I didn't count them, but I mean, it was probably a half a dozen or more people, literally, like, that was their prayer request that they wrote. And really cool. If you're one of those people, we prayed for you by name, that God would show you what you cannot see about yourself that you need to see. And so that was like huge courage moment of just like, you know what, I want to live life according to God's ways, even if it's painful and hard. So
I like the thing you've said in the past. I don't think you said it in this sermon, but someone comes up to me and says, I think this is a thing that is not in alignment with God's ways. And like, well, I just don't see it. Well, that's the definition of a blind spot. Just because you don't see the car in that blind spot of your rearview mirror, and that's why you get in the wreck when you change lanes. So I think it's easy to take the critique of a decision you've made, or a critique of an attitude you have, or a critique of a decision, or whatever the things are, and you're like, well, you don't see it the way I do. Well, okay, entertain that maybe some of this is sitting in a blind spot, and that's why you don't see it that way. So you might want to check your mirrors, reconsider. Maybe there, like you're saying, like maybe there's like a kernel of truth in there that the Lord needs to pull out. Because for attempting, just like, well, I don't see it, so you're dumb.
Because, I mean, here's the thing: is like I think this really our pride gets in the way because the assumption is, well, if I could see it, then I would do something about it, right? Yeah. So I can't see it, so there's nothing to do about. But if you have a greater measure of humility of like, there might actually be something I can't see, but I still need to deal with. And again, I mean, I can't remember if I don't think you were on that trip, Brian. Brian and I've traveled a lot of places in the world together, but I mean, I don't think we went to India together. Literally in India, they drive on the wrong side of the road there. If you didn't know that, they're under the British influence. Yeah. And we're about to cross the street. Ooh, and I looked the wrong way for India, but the right way for America. Yeah. And I literally almost stepped off the curb, and then an arm hits me in the chest. Wow. Because if I had stepped off, like, I would have got hit by a bus. We joke about the getting hit by a bus. Like, it almost happened to me. Wow. Praise God, it didn't. Yeah. But somebody else saw it. And I don't even remember who it was on the team, or if it was one of the Indians we were with, or what. But it was somebody looking the right way, and I was looking the wrong way. And if I had just like stepped off the curb right there, I tell you what, at that moment, when I had an arm slide across my chest, and then I saw and felt the whiz of a bus in front of me, you know what? I like wanted to hug and kiss that person, not argue with them about it. I don't see it. Now I see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
How dare you stop me from being hit by a bus?
Yeah. You hit me too hard.
Yeah.
Oh, my chest.
Broke a rib.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Sternum injury. Hey, rather a sternum injury than death, right?
Absolutely. That reminds me of a time when I was in my physical therapy training where I got some correction from another physical therapist, and I didn't like the way it was given.
Yeah.
And I felt through that process that, praying and really seeking the Lord in this, that he didn't approach it from the right way, but there were still things I needed to learn from him, even though I wanted to avoid him. Like it was just, I don't know if you ever had those people in your life. It's like, I want to avoid those people, but God's placed them there to teach me something.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the Bible reading plan you just went through, Numbers chapter 22, where Balaam gets spoke to by his own donkey. And if God can use a donkey to speak to you, how much more can he use a human that he created in the image of God to speak to you?
Yeah.
And even if that human is talking to you in a way you don't appreciate, or they're crossing the line, there's oftentimes, I love what you said, take it before the Lord, like, God, how much of this is true? How much do you need to change by? And it takes a lot of humility. And as we talk about a lot of hope, the number one shortcut in life is teachability.
Yep.
In order to be teachable, you got to be humble. So, I've lived it, and probably will still live it, throughout however many years I have on this earth left. It's like the importance of taking it before the Lord. Okay, what's true? What do you learn from this? Even though I don't appreciate the way it was shared.
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to the fact that truth is truth, right? So if you want the truth, if you want to walk in the light and you want to live in truth, then truth is truth regardless of who it comes from, where it comes from, when it comes, And I think one of the challenging things in life, I mean, that was a great example. You just said, it also happens in ministry, I mean, there's like, I would like to say that all of the people that have ever, sort of given feedback, constructive feedback, have always been the most wonderful, encouraging people, right? Yep. And you're like, man, they are so encouraging. And then it was like, hey, I just want to share one thing with you, and let's just see, like, take it before the Lord and see if I'm right, because maybe I'm not. It didn't come like that. Like more times than often, the criticism, and I know others of you, like Jake, you're still pretty new, so you may not have experienced this as a pastor yet. Brian knows what I'm talking about, but it'll be the person who is really not that involved. They're sort of nominally involved, and like the one time that they were here in the last 6 months, yes, there was something that did not go perfectly, and they happened to see it, and then they really spoke up, and not necessarily in a very helpful, kind way, but it's even in those moments where it's like, all right, where's the kernel of truth? And God, I don't like the way that they shared it with me. I don't like the fact that they haven't been here in 6 months and they're not involved, and the one day that they come, this is what they tell me. Doesn't matter. It's still true. You still got to deal with it, and you gotta take some discipline and be like, thank you so much for sharing that. So
it's good.
Well, Jake, you mentioned the reading plan and Numbers. We're well past Numbers.
Yeah, we're blew past
at this point. We've just, if you're keeping up with the Bible reading journal, we have just recently finished Judges and Ruth, which are contemporary of each other, and we're now into 1 Samuel. So any thoughts or takeaways on the reading so far? I mean, which I'm now going to answer my own question. So,
what do you think, Brian? Tell
us.
Let
me say. So it's interesting. So just because I'm weird, I'm doing an audio Bible, and I'm not doing the journal, but I'm doing a through the Bible in a year plan. So we're behind. Like I'm still in Joshua. I don't know why we're so slow. I double checked and make sure we do end Revelation.
Did he fight the Battle of Jericho yet?
Yeah, we just did the where Joshua doesn't consult the Lord.
Yeah.
When the
Gibeonites.
Yeah. The Gershonites, those are different people.
All the ites and the bites and the mosquito bites.
Yep.
That's where I am. But the fam is going through sort of a summary Bible that the kids can track with. And Friday, we were hitting, I think we hit Samuel, not in the face, but we were, they were wanting to know more about Eli's sons and what was going on with that. So we did a deeper dive with that. But just coming out of Judges, I think it's interesting. I was telling them, you've got Moses who's saying, walk in God's ways and it'll go better. Don't walk in God's ways and it'll be bad. And Joshua essentially says the exact same thing. On his way out, he says, follow God's ways, it's good. Don't follow God's ways, it's going to be bad for you. Mm-hmm. And then almost immediately, you just watch this degradation of the culture. Throughout Judges, the judges start pretty good. These are valiant people, and then by the time you get to Samson, and I'm not even going to dare repeat the last story in Judges because it's both gruesome and not family friendly, but you're just watching the quality of the judges go downhill. Yep. Samson is not he's a strong guy, but his moral center is a little wacky. But you also have to assume, well, this is the best that God has to work with. So if Samson's the best we have to work with, and Samson's kind of a punk, where's the rest of the culture? And I was telling them, it really is on the kid. I'm talking to my kids. They can choose to listen and, like you're saying, be teachable. They can choose to follow God's ways or not. But what you're sort of watching throughout Judges is God's patience. Mm-hmm. He's, people are not choosing to follow, and then they get in a bad way and they cry out and God comes in, but it's not like it's really causing repentance. He's getting them out of a jam, and that doesn't really change their heart. And so he's being amazingly patient. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of get into this mode of, well, God kind of blinks here and there, and maybe he's missing what I'm doing. And you mistake God's patience for God's weakness. Mm-hmm. I was telling the kids, I'm like, don't you believe it. God will be patient with you, and you could get into a season where you're not teachable, or you get hooked by a sin and you're like in that for a while. But don't ever mistake that what I'm doing is because God is missing what's going on in my life. And you would be well served to repent as fast as possible and get back into God's ways, because his patience is not equal to his weakness. It is equal to his kindness, but that's sort of my generic takeaway from Judges. And Ruth, just the cutest story, sort of. I mean,
sort of.
Yeah. I mean, for me, of the whole Bible reading plan so far, because we're in 1 Samuel now, but the whole Bible reading plan, the thing that jumped out to me the most as I've been journaling was Judges 2 and 3. Of the whole thing, because I have I love history, and so one of the things that really I like to see is the path of leadership and the morality of the people. And man, Judges 2 is just such a sad story in chapter 6. I mean, this really happened. So Judges 2, I'm going to skip down to 10. It's after the whole generation, which is Joshua's generation. After the whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor we had done for Israel. What's interesting, though, you go up to verse 7, the people served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and the elders who outlived him. and who had seen all these great things that the Lord had done for Israel. So one of the interesting things is leadership and morality of the people. Yep. Correlation, I think I wasn't there. But it's interesting about leadership, that piques my interest. And second, not passing it on to the next generation. And that's what we're tasked to do, is to pass, where I'm tasked to pass on to my kids. And, Joshua makes that statement, as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. Did his household actually do that? I don't know. But it looks like as the general populace did not. The next generation did not. And so it definitely encourages me to pass it on to my kids and to lead in a way that the next generation would know and follow. They have to make their choice, but we can definitely set them up. So this is, for me, the thing that stuck out to me the most about leadership and morality of people of the whole Bible reading plan so far.
What was it? I mean, the 1980s, as I remember it in church life, was a lot about, in addition to Jesus is coming back like on Wednesday, aside every Wednesday, he's just going to come back.
88 Reasons in 1988.
Yeah. Aside from that being just a general theme, like the second coming is any second now. But there was a lot of, you may be the only Jesus that someone ever sees. And that we're really only one generation away from absolute biblical ignorance. If this generation does not pass down biblical knowledge and wisdom to the next generation, that generation is ignorant and they're not going to have anything to pass down. So it really is dependent on those who know today to pass it on down to the next generation. Otherwise, we'll be in the same position.
Yeah, I think... Man, I mean, there's so much we could say, but I think just, I think what you brought up, Jake, about leadership and the importance of it. I mean, we really see what it was like. I mean, I think one of the things that, from my this doctoral degree that I'm working on, I mean, I'm focusing on like leadership transition. So one of the interesting things that you see is that you have in the course of a generation here, you have the handoff from Moses to Joshua that went well, but arguably that there was no plan for succession after Joshua. There wasn't somebody prepared, somebody raised up, and so what you have sort of de facto is out of God's mercy is you have these judges. Right. And so there's this cycle that happens. It's a 5-step cycle that happens like 7 different times, and some of them, because some of the judges, like, it's really short, like you're like, wait, what? That's like, it's a sentence about it. But the people get into sin, which they're doing whatever makes sense to them, right? Because that's what we do as sinners. And then because of that, they get into servitude. There's some nation group that's oppressing them, and which you can actually sort of back that up to the book of Joshua.
Yes.
You notice that they did not completely obey God fully and wipe out every nation that he told them to wipe out. Which, again, it's hard for us to read that and understand that today, but what God was doing is that those nations had been an abomination to God. They were doing awful, horrible things that we're not even going to go into. And so God was using his people, the Israelites, as an instrument of judgment on those wicked nations. And the ones that they did not completely destroy like they were supposed to are the very ones that came back and caused all the problems for them. So anyways, one of those, they get into servitude, then the people cry out to God, supplication. There's all these S's here, right? Because why not? But
why not?
Supplication, they're praying out to God, asking for help. He brings salvation in the form of one of these judges, and then the people go right back to ignoring God. And then they get into sin again because they've been ignoring God. And it's just like this downward spiral that happens. So I think this whole, like, when you look at Judges, well, from the end of Joshua all of Judges, and then as Samuel's beginning, you really do see the importance of leadership. You know, as go the leader, so goes the people. And when there's no leader, then the people are just sort of off doing whatever is right in their own eyes. And what's right to you is different from the next person, And so that's you know, that's a big theme. But even in the middle of all of that, God is still moving his plans and purposes forward, which is incredibly encouraging to see. You know, I think one of the big things that's struck me just this time reading, I've tried to read through the Bible every year for the last, I don't know how many years. And it's like, by the time you get to the end of the year and you're, you know, the end of the New Testament, you forget all the details of the Old Testament. So then you're like reintroduced. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I remember. But one of the things that's really impressed me this time is just how specific God is. Like, I mean, he lays it out there. If you obey, this is what's going to happen. If you don't, this is what's going to happen. I mean, it's super clear. And he repeats it over and over and over and over and over again. And what happens? Maybe they obey for a little while, but then they disobey. And guess what? Exactly what God said happens, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, where did this come from? I didn't know this was going to happen. Like, bro, it's right there.
I mean, you know, I don't know where in 1 Samuel the reading is, so I don't know how close to Saul.
1 to 3. As of today on Monday.
Yeah, okay. So Saul is coming, David is coming in 1 Samuel, but we were going through, I think it was Deuteronomy, and there was already provisions for when you have a king, blah, 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 blah. So even in that, I think what you said is really telling, and I hadn't thought about it that way before. There wasn't a succession from Joshua to whoever the next person was. You really are left with people were doing whatever made sense to them, which is that beautiful last sentence of Judges that you just don't feel good about. Everyone was doing what was right in their own eyes, and you don't ever get the feeling of like, oh, well, that's okay then. Way to go, guys.
It's more like, oh, that's why.
But that even in that, because God should have been their king and God should have been their ruler, or the Levites should have had their act together and were providing a good amount of leadership by adhering to the laws and all that. In some regard, the king is another part of mercy for them. That they're really, we need to have somebody who is leading this bunch, because when we're left to our own devices, we're a mess. You know?
Yeah.
Just generally speaking, we're a mess.
That's right.
Well, any other final thoughts before we wrap up for today?
That was a great discussion.
Yeah.
Man, really
fun.
Good stuff.
I hope you, dear audience member, also had fun listening and or watching what's going on. So that was episode 11 of season 4 of the Sunday Extra podcast. We are, I guess, just 3 weeks till Easter. So I encourage you to be inviting people, praying. We were hoping if we could double our normal attendance on Sunday and have over 900 people, which is, you know, it sounds like a lot, but I think we were at 850 last year. So it's not a huge increase, but for everybody who's here who doesn't already know Jesus, they're going to hear a clear presentation of the gospel. So it's not really just about the number, but it's about how many people in Fort Worth can we tell the story of the resurrected Jesus to. So we would like as many people here on Easter Sunday as possible. So be praying about that, praying for opportunities to invite people. This Sunday, we're going to be hitting chapters 13 through 16 of John. It's part 1 of 2 as we get closer and closer to Easter. So we look forward to seeing you on Sunday to worship with us. We'll catch you here on the Sunday Extra podcast next week. We'll see you later.